Hello and welcome to today's tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make neck warmers, and I've got some examples to show you here. This one is two colors. It can be worn on either side. It's completely reversible, so you can wear this side or this side, or you can just adjust it so that you have the two colors showing like this. Or like this. So you get multiple variations out of the one neck warmer. So this is the two color neck warmer standard size. I'm also going to be showing you how to make the one color. So this is just one color. This is a child size. These are all completely reversible, and these are just examples of reversible neck warmers. This is a little more fancy. As you can see, the fleeces on the inside, the soft part, and then you've got the decorative fabric outside. They all are stretch materials. That's one of the key things. So you have to use stretch materials. You'll find that in the instructions once you download them. And here's another example of a two color neck warmer. I've just put these here to give you ideas. So it's important to use a stretch fabric for this. Like I said, I've used fleece. You can use any fabric that you like, that you're comfortable with. And one thing I will ask you at the end of this, one of the requests I have is that you assist me, if possible, with trying to get as many neck warmers out there to people who need them. So all the instructions are available for download, and if you could spare a piece of material and some time, I would ask that you make one or two neck warmers to give away to someone within your circle or out of your circle even, who desperately needs to have a neck warmer this coming winter. So I'm going to move on now to the first part of the instruction video. So you can pause it here and get your materials ready. Okay, in this example we are going to be sewing the two colored neck warmer. I've chosen the standard size for this example, and I'm using fleece as my fabric of choice. Fleece has a nice stretch for going over your head. So I have lined this up with right sides facing, and I'm going to be sewing along the long edge, 1/2 inch seam allowance, using one of the optional stretch stitches on my sewing machine. In the instructions, you will see there are several stretch stitches that you can use. You want to use a stretch stitch because if you use a regular straight stitch, you sew this with a straight stitch, when you go to stretch this over your head, the fabric will stretch and you will break your thread. So go into the instructions and choose one of those stretch stitches and sew 1/2 inch seam allowance across the top and bottom with right sides facing. So this is the stretch stitch I have chosen. You may have one like this on your sewing machine. This is my preference. I will be sewing my 1/2 inch seam allowance using this stitch. So now that we've sewn our 1/2 inch seam allowance along the edge using our stretch stitch, you see the difference? I've used a stretch stitch, and so I've still maintained the stretch of the fabric. We're going to close off these edges now. So what you're going to do, pay close attention. We want always the right sides facing. So I'm going to pull this through and have my right sides facing again. So pretty much we're going to have the neck warmer on the wrong side. So pull this through like this. And you're going to line up your seams. Bring all the way around. Take your time, do this neatly. Anchor your seams first. You are working with stretch fabric, so you can start from here, and then when you reach here, you're probably going to be off. So line these up. You cut your both pieces of fabric accurately. You've sewn them accurately. So if there's any shifting, it's not because you cut your fabric wrong. So I put my 2 end pieces here. So you've positioned everything. You have the 2 pins marking your opening. You're going to sew all the way around, stopping here, back stitch to close off your stitch. When you start, remember you back stitch as well. You don't want this to unravel. And then this opening, you will pull your neck warmer through. Again, depending on how heavy the fabric is that you are using for your neck warmer, the size of this opening needs to be modified to ensure that it is wide enough to pull your fabric through. Because I've made quite a few of these, I know that leaving this opening, it's about 4 inches, it's a 4-inch opening, actually 3.5 inch, is enough for this fleece to come through. It's better when you're starting off to leave a wider opening than a smaller opening if you're uncertain about the fabric, and then you just close it up by hand. Or if you have enough space, you can actually turn it and go into the machine and close it. But if you have too small an opening, you are going to struggle to get this turned over. So go ahead now, using a stretch stitch, sew all the way around, 1/2 inch seam allowance, start here, back stitch, stop here, back stitch. And then put your hand through and pull your neck warmer through the opening. I go slowly at this point because I want to make sure my seams line up. I'm coming back to my pin, and I've got a seam here that I've got to be very careful not to let slip so that it does not line up properly. So I'm going to hold it down properly and you can see I've got my opening here to turn this through. So I've sewn around my stretch stitch 1/2 inch and I've left my opening. So all that's left for me to do now is reach in and just start to pull the neck warmer through. Don't be in a hurry, don't rush. You don't want to rip stitches. Just take your time and it will come through slowly. And just like that, we have our neck warmer, and as you can see there's this little opening on the side that you can hand stitch closed using very neat stitches. You could also hold it at this point and sew it on your machine and get as close as you want to give yourself less hand stitching to do so. If you hold it like this, if you've left too big a space, just go back on your machine and close it up like this and pull that through, and then you'll just have a tiny space. I'll go on my machine and I'll do that to show you as well. So you see why it's important to take the time at those seams, because you want this nice finish, and that will allow you now. So this is the neck warmer, so you can wear this neck warmer half and half, You can wear it on this side because it's fully reversible. You can wear it fully black. You can adjust it and have just this little ribbon top again, and that's why we were very, very cautious to make sure that these seams matched up so that it would not limit how you wear it. I mean, it's not going to limit how you wear it, but it just looks a lot neater. So this is the opening here that we're going to be finishing off. So pull it through and go ahead and close this up. So like I said, if you think you've left too big an opening and you want to minimize the amount of hand sewing you do with this hole, all you've got to do, pull a little bit of it through like this, hold your seams, just fold it over as much as you can. So what I've done, you see, so I've pulled it through just a little bit. This is where I stopped, and now what I'm going to do is see how much of this I can pull through, just like this. Pull a little bit back through, watch it carefully. See, I've just pulled it. Now I'm going to go back in the machine and I'm just going to close up about an inch and a half to minimize the hand sewing that I have to do. It's a little bit fiddly at this point. Just take your time. And I'm going to sew this down. So there you go, you can see better what I'm doing. See what I've done? So I've pulled it through and I'm just going to sew 1/2 inch. So back stitch first and stitch forward now. I'm going to try to make this opening as small as possible so that I have very little hand stitching to do. Pull this aside. And so this is what I've done. See, I just popped a little piece through the hole, and so this is where I stopped, and I just continued along the way and stitched in a little bit. So now what I have, if I push this back through, I've got a smaller hole to work with than the bigger hole that I had. So I've just got this much to do. So as I mentioned, those of you who had a small opening, you will be finished by now. I went back to the machine and I used that technique I showed you, and I reduced the size of the opening. So now I have to go hand sew this to close it up, and then the neck warmer is complete. All of my lines have matched up nicely. Again, because I used those clips, all of the seams have matched up nicely. And that's pretty much it. That's it for the 2-color neck warmer. And you've maintained the stretch for going over your head. Congratulations, and enjoy the neck warmer. In this tutorial, we are going to be doing the single color reversible neck warmer. So if you look at your instructions, you'll see that it's just one piece that you have to cut, and it's almost a square depending on the size you're making. So this one is a standard size, so it's 25 by 25. This is the wrong side of the fabric, this is the right side. So you want to put this together, right sides facing. right sides of the fabric facing, and you are going to sew half an inch seam allowance along this side using one of your stretch stitches. So if you haven't watched the first video yet showing how to do the 2-color neck warmer, I'll just quickly recap. In the instructions, you are going to find an example, a page that shows you examples of different stretch stitches. So you want to look to your machine and find one of those stitches to use because you want to maintain the stretch of the fabric. One thing I should point out, when you are cutting the single color, it looks almost like a square, so it's easy to get confused. So you want to use the side with more stretch. So the side doesn't have much stretch. This is the side with the stretch. So you're going to sew along this side, half an inch seam allowance using a stretch stitch. I forgot to mention that these fabrics do have a tendency to slip as you sew. So please remember to put your pins or clips to anchor the fabric together, especially at the end points, to make sure that it doesn't shift when you're sewing. So we've sewn our ½ inch seam allowance using a stretch stitch. Notice the fabric can still stretch. And this is the wrong side of the fabric. So we always want to work with right sides facing. So you're going to take this and turn it inward. Bring it to match the seam. Turn the entire thing over so that your right sides are facing. We're going to line everything up properly. This is your critical point. You want to make sure that you line this seam up. So take one of your clips or your straight pin and you put that there. Keep going around until you've anchored all the pieces together properly. So I've gone ahead and I've clipped mine completely. My seams are matched up here. Everything is clipped, and this is why I said you need 2 pins. Remember, we need to leave this opening. So the 2 pins are marking the opening that we need. You're going to start sewing here, back stitch, sew all the way around, back stitch, using a stretch stitch, 1/2 inch seam allowance. And once you're done, then you just have to open this up and pull the neck warmer through. So once you've sewn it together, this is what you should have. And you should have this little opening. So now you're going to take this, put your fingers inside, grab the bottom and just gently pull it through. Take your time. I'm pretty much done here, so just take your time and pull it through. You don't want to damage your fabric or break any stitches. So as you can see, the seam is matched up perfectly. That's why we take our time to pin or clip. So now we have the little opening that we left to pull it through. You can go in and hand stitch this closed. And if you haven't seen the other video where I've demonstrated this little trick, I'll show you here. You can watch very carefully. So you can go in and just turn this over a little bit. And you can go back to your machine and sew a little more so that you have a very small opening to hand stitch. Or you can just, at this point, just hand stitch it and finish it off. But if you've left an extremely large opening and you don't like how your hand stitching looks, you have the option of doing this to minimize the size. So you can go ahead and do this part on the machine now, or you can hand stitch and finish off the neck warmer.